The great crystal hall of Vextar stretched wide under 3 artificial suns, filled with the strangest collection of beings the galaxy had ever assembled. Ambassador Krellthax slithered across the smooth floor, his snake-like body gleaming with purple scales that caught the light. Behind him, hundreds of alien delegates filled the vast space, some floating, some crawling, others existing as pure energy that danced in the air like living fire. Today was the day they would decide the fate of countless worlds, including a small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy that most barely knew existed. Krellthax reached the center of the hall and activated the great viewing screen. Images appeared in the air above them, 3-dimensional and perfectly clear. A world covered in blue oceans and swirling white clouds came into view, rotating slowly for all to see. "Behold the 3rd planet of the Sol system," Krellthax announced, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's perfect acoustics. "The world they call Earth, home to the species known as humanity." A wave of clicking, buzzing, and humming sounds filled the hall as the various alien races expressed their amusement. The insectoid hive lords rubbed their front legs together, creating a sound like hundreds of crickets. The energy beings called Luminari pulsed brighter, their light forms dancing with what could only be described as laughter. The images changed, showing human cities from above. Tall buildings reached toward the sky, connected by rivers of moving vehicles. Krellthax gestured dismissively at the display. "Look at their so-called civilization," he said with obvious disgust. "Still confined to the surface of a single world. After thousands of years of development, they have not even managed to properly colonize their own moon." More images flashed by. Human spacecraft that looked primitive and bulky, held together with metal bolts and powered by controlled explosions. The aliens in the audience made more sounds of amusement. High Luminar Aextos, a being of pure golden light, brightened noticeably as he spoke. "Their fastest ships barely reach a fraction of light speed. At this rate, it would take them thousands of years to reach even their nearest stellar neighbors. But surely they show promise in other areas?" asked Hive Lord Vrakkan, his compound, eyes reflecting rainbow colors in the artificial light. "Perhaps their technology in other fields compensates for their lack of space travel abilities." Krellthax's snake-like mouth curved into what might have been a smile. "Observe their energy, production methods." The display showed human power plants, some burning fossil fuels that created dark smoke, others using primitive nuclear reactions that required massive concrete structures. "They have barely mastered fusion power," Krellthax continued. "And, even then, only in the most basic forms. They still burn ancient organic matter for much of their energy needs, poisoning their own atmosphere in the process." The machine collective known as the Iterants processed this information with mechanical precision. Their leader, a towering construct of gleaming metal and pulsing lights, spoke in a voice that sounded like grinding gears. "Analysis complete. Species demonstrates suboptimal resource utilization. Technological development rate insufficient for galactic relevance. Projected time to achieve interstellar capability. Minimum 500 standard cycles." This pronouncement caused an even greater uproar among the assembled delegates. Some of the smaller species chittered excitedly, while others made sounds that could only be described as electronic snickering. "500 cycles," exclaimed Aextos, his light form pulsing rapidly. "By then, our own civilizations will have expanded across half the galaxy. They will still be crawling between worlds like newborn larvae." The images continued to change, showing human conflicts, armies facing each other across battlefields, weapons that created explosions but seemed laughably primitive compared to the energy weapons and planet crackers that the advanced species possessed. "Perhaps most amusing of all," Krellthax said, pausing for effect, "they still fight among themselves. Even now, as we speak, various human factions engage in territorial disputes over resources that barely qualify as significant by galactic standards." "Territorial disputes?" Vrakkan clicked in disbelief. "Over what, patches of dirt?" "Water sources, energy deposits, arable land." Krellthax displayed a map showing various human nations. They have divided their single world into hundreds of separate territories, each controlled by different groups that frequently attempt to claim resources from their neighbors. The hall erupted in what could generously be called laughter, though it sounded more like a symphony of alien machinery breaking down all at once. Fascinating, hummed the iterant Prime. A species that cannot achieve unity on a single world believes it can eventually master the galaxy. High Luminar Aextos dimmed slightly as if in deep thought. Perhaps they might serve some purpose in the distant future. Basic manual labor, perhaps. Maintenance of mining equipment on worlds too dangerous for more valuable species. In a few millennia, certainly, agreed Krelthax. Assuming they managed to avoid destroying themselves first, their weapons, while primitive, appear sufficient to render their own world uninhabitable if misused. The viewing screen displayed humanity's nuclear arsenal, weapons that could devastate cities, but were nothing compared to the star-destroying technology that advanced civilizations possessed. The question before us today, Krelthax continued, is whether this species warrants monitoring or if we should simply ignore them until they either evolve or eliminate themselves. The vote was swift and predictable. Species after species cast their decision, most not even bothering with detailed consideration. The energy beings pulsed their votes. The insectoids clicked their approval. The machines calculated and confirmed. Humanity would remain under technological quarantine. Their solar system would be marked as a developing primitive zone, to be revisited in 1,000 standard cycles to assess any potential progress. As the Great Assembly dispersed, none of the alien delegates gave humanity another thought. They were, after all, just another primitive species among millions scattered across the galaxy, cosmically irrelevant, and certainly no threat to the established order of things. Dr. Minho Kim floated weightlessly in the command center of the Endeavor, watching the stars shift in ways no human had ever seen before. The quantum tunnel drive hummed beneath his feet, bending space itself to carry their small ship beyond the edges of the solar system for the first time in human history. Quantum, field is stable, reported engineer So-Young Park from her station, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. We're maintaining 73% efficiency on the tunnel generator. Captain Dongwoo Lee pushed himself gently through the zero gravity to join Minho at the main viewing port. Through the transparent metal, space looked different than it did from Earth. The stars seemed closer, brighter, and somehow more welcoming. After all these years of dreaming about this moment, Dongwoo said quietly, I can hardly believe we're actually here. The Endeavor was small compared to the massive ships shown in human entertainment, but she represented the absolute peak of Earth's technology. Every circuit, every bolt, every line of code had been crafted by humanity's finest minds. 12 crew members had trained for years for this mission, knowing they would be the first humans to leave their home solar system. Communications Officer Hei-Jin Lim looked up from her console with excitement in her eyes. Captain, I'm picking up artificial signals. Multiple sources all around us. We're not alone out here. The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems. For decades, humans had wondered if they were the only intelligent life in the universe. Now they had their answer. Can you identify the sources? Dongwoo asked, moving carefully to avoid bumping into the low ceiling. Working on it. Hai-Jin replied, her hands moving quickly over her controls. The signals are unlike anything in our databases. Complex mathematical patterns, but definitely artificial. Minho felt his heart racing. This was the moment that would change everything for humanity. First contact with alien intelligence would mark the beginning of a new age for Earth. On the long-range sensors, pilot Changmin Seo noticed something that made his stomach drop. Captain, we have company. Multiple contacts, large ones moving in our direction fast. The main screen shifted to show the tactical display. 12 massive shapes appeared at the edge of sensor range, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They moved with purpose and speed that made the Endeavor look like a child's toy. Are they responding to our presence? Dongwoo asked, though he already suspected the answer. Unknown, Changmin replied, his voice tight with tension. But they're surrounding us. Whatever they are, they're not happy we're here. The alien ships closed in with military precision. As they came within visual range, the crew of the Endeavour got their first look at technology far beyond human understanding. The vessels were sleek and predatory, covered in what looked like organic armor that shifted and flowed like living metal. "Incoming transmission," Hygiene announced, her voice barely above a whisper. The main screen filled with the image of something that would haunt human nightmares for generations. Battle Commander Sektar's serpentine form coiled in what was obviously a command chair, his purple scales gleaming under alien lighting. When he spoke, his voice was translated by the ship's computer into cold, precise words. "Primitive vessel, you have violated the quarantine boundary established by the Galactic Consortium. Your species has been classified as developmentally insufficient and confined to your birth system." Captain Dongwu stepped forward, his military training taking over despite the unprecedented situation. "This is Captain Lee of the Earth vessel, Endeavour. We come in peace, seeking to establish diplomatic contact with other intelligent species." Sektar's laugh was a sound like breaking glass. "Diplomatic contact? You are insects that have learned to build crude machines. You are not ready for contact with your superiors." Engineer Park worked frantically at her console, trying to boost their communication systems. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy buildups on all the alien ships. Whatever they're planning, it's big." Minho activated the cultural database they had prepared for exactly this situation. Mathematical constants, artistic representations of human culture, musical compositions that demonstrated the beauty and complexity of human civilization, began broadcasting on all frequencies. "Please," Dongwu said, his voice steady despite the fear he felt. "We're explorers, not warriors. We've come seeking knowledge and friendship. These transmissions show who we are, what we've achieved." Sektar studied the incoming data for perhaps 3 seconds before dismissing it with a gesture that somehow conveyed infinite contempt. "Your achievements are meaningless. Your art is primitive noise. Your mathematics are barely beyond counting on your appendages." His scaled head tilted in what might have been curiosity. "Did you truly believe that breaking our laws would result in welcome and celebration?" The energy readings on the alien ship spiked dramatically. Every alarm on the Endeavour began screaming warnings that the crew barely understood. "Captain," Changmin called out, his voice cracking with stress. "They're targeting us. All weapon systems are hot." In those final moments, as death approached faster than thought, Minho's hands flew over his console with desperate purpose. The quantum tunnel transmitter, designed for long-range communication with Earth, drew every bit of power the ship could provide. His message was simple but complete: the location of the attack, energy signatures of the alien weapons, tactical, information about their ships, and most importantly, proof that humanity was not welcome among the stars. "Message sent," he whispered, just as Sektar's plasma cannons turned the Endeavour into expanding gas and scattered debris. The transmission reached Earth through the quantum tunnel just as the link collapsed, carrying with it the end of humanity's innocent dreams of peaceful contact. The elevator descended deeper into the mountain than most people knew was possible. Dr. Jiwan Choi stood silently as the numbers on the display climbed higher, indicating levels that officially did not exist on any government blueprint. Beside her, the world's most powerful leaders sat in stunned silence, still processing the news of humanity's first contact with alien life and its immediate, violent end. The doors opened with a soft whisper, revealing a corridor that stretched into darkness. Motion sensors activated rows of lights as they walked, illuminating walls carved from solid rock and reinforced with materials that looked almost alien themselves. "Project Damocles has been active for 91 years, Dr. Choi explained as they moved through the underground facility. "What I'm about to show you was authorized in 2034, after the last global conflict made it clear that humanity needed to prepare for threats we couldn't yet imagine." President Martinez, his face pale from the journey into the depths of the mountain, shook his head in disbelief. "You're telling us there's been a secret military program running for nearly a century, and nobody knew about it?" "Some people knew," Dr. Choi replied, stopping before a massive steel door marked only with symbols that meant nothing to the visiting leaders. But very few. The program was designed to activate only when humanity faced an existential threat from advanced civilizations. She placed her hand on a scanner that analyzed her genetic signature, retinal patterns, and something else the leaders couldn't identify. The door, which must have weighed several tons, slid open without a sound. The chamber beyond was vast, its ceiling lost in shadows high above. Holographic displays filled the air, showing star charts, weapon specifications, and ship designs that looked nothing like the crude rockets the world knew about. In the center of it all stood Admiral Junseo Han, a man whose official records claimed he had retired from the Navy 5 years earlier. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Han said, his voice echoing in the enormous space, "welcome to humanity's real space program." The displays shifted, showing images that made the assembled leaders gasp. Sleek vessels that looked more like living creatures than machines floated in hidden construction bays. Their hulls were smooth and dark, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. 300 ships, Admiral Han continued, walking among the holographic projections as if they were old friends. Each one powered by a contained singularity and armed with weapons that make our nuclear arsenal look like firecrackers. Prime Minister Wong leaned forward, studying the technical specifications floating before her. "These energy readings, they're impossible. Our best fusion reactors produce a fraction of this power. That's because our best public fusion reactors are deliberately limited," Dr. Choi explained. "We've had true matter-energy conversion for 40 years, gravitational manipulation for 30, quantum-linked weapons systems for 20. The truth hit the leaders like a physical blow. While the world had celebrated each small step in space exploration, while humanity had appeared to struggle with basic rocket technology, their greatest minds had been working in secret to prepare for exactly what had just happened to the Endeavour. "But why hide it?" asked Chancellor Davis, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why let the world believe we were so primitive?" Admiral Han smiled grimly. "Because we learned from our own history. Every time a technologically superior civilization encountered a less advanced one, the results were predictable. The advanced civilization either enslaved or destroyed the primitive one." Dr. Choi activated another display, showing historical records of human conflicts. When Europeans first encountered the Americas, superior technology allowed a few hundred conquistadors to destroy entire empires. When industrialized nations met agricultural societies, the outcome was always the same. We realized that if we ever encountered alien civilizations, they would likely be far more advanced than us, Admiral Han continued. So we made a decision. We would appear weak and primitive while secretly developing the most advanced military technology possible. The holographic ships rotated slowly, revealing weapon systems that seemed to bend space itself. Torpedo-like. Devices that could phase through matter. Energy cannons that drew power directly from dimensional rifts. Defensive systems that could make entire ships exist in multiple locations simultaneously. The quantum tunnel drive on the Endeavour was real, Dr. Choi said, but it was also bait. We needed to know how advanced civilizations would react to humanity reaching beyond our solar system. "You sent those people to die?" President Martinez asked, horror in his voice. "We sent volunteers who knew the risks," Admiral Han replied firmly. Dr. Minho Kim and his crew understood they might not return. Their sacrifice gave us the intelligence we needed to activate the next phase. The display shifted again, showing real-time positions of the hidden fleet. Ships that had been waiting in quantum space for decades began moving toward predetermined positions around alien territory. While they were laughing at our primitive rockets and chemical propulsion, Dr. Choi said, we were building a fleet that could destroy star systems. While they mocked our inability to achieve interstellar travel, we were developing weapons that could phase through their shields and appear inside their ships. Admiral Han gestured to the tactical display showing Zephyrian fleet movements. They believe they're dealing with a species that just learned to leave its home planet. They're about to discover what happens when you underestimate a civilization that survived 2 world wars and learned to hide its true capabilities. The assembled leaders stared in amazement and growing understanding. Humanity had been playing a much deeper game than anyone realized, preparing for this moment for nearly a century. The aliens think they destroyed our first attempt at interstellar travel, Dr. Choi said quietly. They have no idea they just woke up something that's been waiting in the darkness, ready to show them what real predators look like. Plan, Commander. Sektar coiled comfortably in his command chair, reviewing the victory report about the primitive human vessel they had destroyed 3 days earlier. The endeavor had been pathetically easy to eliminate, requiring only a few seconds of plasma fire. He had expected more resistance from a species bold enough to leave their home system, but humans had proven as weak as their technology suggested. His tactical officer, a younger Zephyrian named Velkan, slithered up to his position with what looked like confusion on his scaled features. Commander, our outer sensors are detecting unusual readings near the Kelthanor mining colony. Sektar barely looked up from his report. Define unusual. Are the humans sending more of their crude exploration vessels? That's just it, sir. The energy signatures don't match anything in our database of human technology. These readings are... Velkan paused, checking his instruments again. They're beyond our measurement scale. For the first time since destroying the human ship, Sektar felt a small stirring of interest. He activated his personal display, expecting to see another small human craft struggling with primitive propulsion systems. Instead, his blood went. Cold ships were emerging from quantum space around Zephyrian territory, but these vessels bore no resemblance to the clumsy Endeavor. They were sleek predators, their dark hulls seeming to absorb light itself. Even more disturbing, their energy signatures indicated power systems that rivaled Zephyrian capital ships. How many? Sektar demanded, his voice sharp with growing alarm. We count 47 vessels so far, sir, but more keep appearing. They're using some kind of dimensional folding technology that we can't track properly. Sektar's scaled hands moved quickly over his controls, trying to contact fleet. Command for reinforcements. Before he could complete the transmission, every communication system on his ship received the same message simultaneously. The main screen filled with the image of a human female in military uniform. Her expression was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its complete lack of emotion. When she spoke, her words were translated perfectly into Zephyrian language. I am Admiral Jun Seo Han of the Terran Defense Force. You made a mistake 3 days ago when you destroyed the Endeavor and murdered her crew. You showed us what you are before you learned what we are. Sektar tried to respond, to demand an explanation or threaten the primitive humans, but his communication systems had been completely overridden. He could only watch and listen as the human continued. The crew of the Endeavor were explorers and scientists. They came seeking peaceful contact and friendship. You responded with immediate violence against beings who posed no threat to you. This was your first mistake. On his tactical display, Sektar watched in growing horror as more human ships appeared throughout Zephyrian space. They moved with precision that spoke of decades of planning and preparation. Your second mistake, Admiral Han continued, was assuming that what you saw was all we were capable of. You judged our entire species based on one small exploration vessel and decided we were primitives unworthy of life. The screen shifted to show technical specifications of the human fleet. Sektar's tactical computer tried to analyze the data and immediately began showing error messages. The power systems alone were beyond anything in Zephyrian technology. For 91 years we have been preparing for this moment. While you laughed at our crude rockets, we built ships powered by contained black holes. While you mocked our chemical propulsion, we developed weapons that can collapse the quantum structure of matter itself. Without warning, the transmission ended. Sektar immediately tried to contact his outer colonies, but half of them were already dark. No responses from mining stations, communication relays, or defensive platforms. Captain Hyunwoo Park's ship, the Retribution, hung in space above the world of Kelthanor like a dark angel of death. The mining colony below supported 3 million Zephyrians and supplied raw materials for the consortium's military expansion. Target confirmed, Park reported to Admiral Han through quantum communication. No civilian evacuation detected. They don't even seem to realize we're here. Execute dimensional charge deployment, Han replied. Make it clean. The weapon that emerged from the retribution was barely larger than a human fist, but it contained technology that the Zephyrians couldn't even understand. As it descended toward Kelthanor's surface, it began altering the fundamental forces that held matter together. Sektar watched from his distant position as one of the consortium's most important worlds simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed by explosion or fire, but actually converted from solid matter into expanding energy over the course of 17 minutes. 3 million lives ended so quickly and completely that they probably never realized what was happening. Kelthanor mining facility eliminated. Park reported with the same tone he might use to announce completion of a training exercise, moving to secondary targets. Across Zephyrian space, similar scenes played out with mechanical precision. Commander Insu Yoon's squadron severed communication networks that had taken centuries to build. Lieutenant Yoon Ji Ko's strike teams eliminated supply depots and transport hubs with surgical accuracy. But the humans weren't simply destroying everything they found. They were dismantling the infrastructure that allowed the Zephyrian Empire to function as a unified force. Cut off from central command, individual colonies began making desperate decisions that only accelerated their own destruction. Within 72 hours, 4 Zephyrian worlds had been reduced to expanding clouds of gas. Supply lines that had supported millions of soldiers were cut. Communication networks that coordinated defense fleets were silent. Sektar found himself commanding the remnants of what had once been the galaxy's most feared military force, trapped in a conflict he couldn't understand against an enemy that shouldn't exist. The emergency meeting took place aboard a hastily constructed space station in the neutral zone, far from the burning remains of what had once been proud Zephyrian colonies. High Luminar Axtos flickered weakly as he materialized in the conference chamber, his energy form barely stable after witnessing the destruction of 4 worlds in less than a week. Around the circular table, the surviving members of what had been the Galactic Consortium gathered like wounded animals. Hive Lord Vraken's compound eyes darted nervously between the exits, while the Iterant Prime's mechanical form showed visible damage from recent combat encounters with human forces. This cannot be happening, Axtos whispered, his light pulsing erratically. The species we dismissed as primitive cosmetic noise has destroyed a quarter of Zephyrian space in 6 days. Battle Commander Sektar, his purple scales dulled with exhaustion and defeat, coiled in what remained of his command chair. Their weapons make no sense. They phase through our shields as if they don't exist. They appear inside our ships without warning. Our best defenses are useless. The humans have been deceiving us, the Iterant Prime stated with mechanical precision. Analysis of recovered battle data indicates technological capabilities far exceeding our initial assessments. They have been operating under deliberate concealment protocols for approximately 90 standard cycles. Vraken clicked his mandibles together nervously. 90 cycles. While we were laughing at their primitive rockets, they were building this? The main display showed recent intelligence, gathered from human fleet movements. Ships that moved through folded space, weapons that could destabilize the cores of planets, defensive systems that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Every piece of evidence painted the same terrifying picture. We have been played for fools, Sektar said bitterly. They wanted us to underestimate them. They sent that exploration ship knowing we would destroy it, knowing it would give them the excuse they needed to reveal their true capabilities. The chamber's main entrance opened with a soft whisper, and the remaining delegates turned to see a sight that would have been impossible just days earlier. Ambassador Hyejin Nam entered the room flanked by 2 human marines in armor that seemed to bend light around itself. Unlike the desperate, pleading transmissions from the Endeavor, Nam radiated quiet confidence backed by demonstrated power. She moved with the careful precision of someone who held all the advantages and knew it. "Honored delegates," she said, her voice carrying easily through the chamber's perfect acoustics. "I bring greetings from the Terran Defense Force and an official message from the government of Earth." Axtos flickered brighter, hope evident in his energy patterns. "Ambassador Nam, surely we can reach some accommodation." The consortium recognizes that our initial assessment of humanity was incomplete. We are prepared to offer full membership and you are prepared to offer nothing, Nam interrupted, her tone remaining perfectly polite while making it clear that negotiation was not an option. You had the opportunity to extend friendship when we came to you in peace. You chose violence instead. She activated a small device that projected holographic images above the conference table. The delegates watched in silence as scenes of destruction played out before them. Zephyrian worlds reduced to expanding gas clouds. Hive Lord monitoring stations going dark one by one. Iterant processing centers transformed into twisted metal graveyards. This is what happens when you mistake mercy for weakness, Nam continued. For 91 years we prepared for the possibility that the galaxy would not welcome us. You taught us that our preparations were necessary. Sektar raised, his scaled head, desperation clear in his voice. What do you want from us, tribute, territory? We can negotiate terms. The Galactic Consortium is dissolved, effective immediately, Nam stated with the finality of someone reading an execution order. All member species will return to their home systems and govern themselves independently. Any attempt to reform your alliance in any capacity will result in the complete sterilization of every world involved. The silence that followed was broken only by the soft humming of the station's life support systems. The implications of her words slowly sank in, as the delegates realized their entire civilization structure was being dismantled. You cannot be serious, Vrakin chittered, his compound eyes reflecting panic. The consortium has maintained galactic order for thousands of cycles, without central coordination. Without central coordination, you'll be forced to focus on your own survival, instead of oppressing younger species, Nam replied. We've studied your history. The consortium exists to maintain the power of its founding members while suppressing any potential competition. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed human fleets maintaining position throughout former consortium space. We learned something valuable from your mockery. The galaxy respects only strength. You taught us that lesson, and now you'll live with the consequences. Extos dimmed to barely visible levels. And if we refuse? If we attempt to maintain our alliances despite your threats? Nam smiled for the first time since entering the chamber, and somehow that expression was more terrifying than any weapon. Then you'll discover why a species that survived 2 world wars and learned to hide its true nature makes such effective predators. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Nam paused at the chamber entrance. The age of human expansion begins. Now, we suggest you spend your time learning to coexist with your neighbors instead of plotting to cage them. The former consortium delegates sat in stunned silence as humanity's representatives vanished through the same dimensional technology that had delivered such swift destruction to their worlds. They had mocked humanity for being confined to a single world, never realizing it had forged them into something the scattered galaxy could never become, truly united and utterly ruthless when threatened.